in my heart of hearts, legacy is not about money. Legacy is about mission. Legacy is about being surrendered. Legacy, having that surrendered heart. And then also legacy is about, breaking free from debt to advance the gospel.
Welcome back to DC Table Talk. My name is Bryan Evans, joined by my friend and pastor Rodney Thrift as always, and we are so glad you're here with us today. I got to warn you up front, today's episode will be a little bit different than what we normally do. So stay tuned, buckle up, stay right there. Because if you were in service on Sunday, if you watched maybe online, then it was a different service altogether. So we're kind of shifting gears a little bit here.
Yeah, it's going to be good today.
And talking more about finances and that sort of thing. But it's probably not what you're thinking. So stay tuned on that. Hold on with that. So how you doing today, Pastor Rodney?
I'm doing well. How are you? I thought we would kick it off today. It's we're really winding the summer down. I mean, the heat's still on us, but
wish I could get out of here. That'd be nice.
Yeah, it would be real good. I was trying to think through there, like, what was your favorite part of the weekend with your family? I guess would be a good question. We both are family men. Love our families, love our wives, our kids, and I have grandkids. You're not there yet, but talk to me a little bit. What was your best part of your weekend, man?
Well, for us, it was just a low-key weekend. We just had time hanging out together around the house, which is always nice, and get some good rest and spend time with the girls, with Ashley, and just having a good time, just hanging around the house and not trying to go and do a whole lot of stuff and get so busy that we miss the small moments. We talk about small moments a lot.
Yeah.
And had some good times with that for sure.
Yeah, we it was a big week for us, Renee's birthday, and it was our 38th wedding anniversary. Yeah. So we had a big week across the board, and so had a couple of key moments. Over the weekend, Renee and I went out over to the island, St. Simon's, to eat on Friday evening, and then Saturday evening the whole family, we ate together. And so that was awesome. Had everybody, all the kids and grandkids and everybody celebrating Renee's birthday. So that was always good. But yeah, I always like to just slow down a bit. And I think it's going to be key for this podcast as we slow down and talk about, you heard me say it Sunday, but I think I'll say it again. Those three things that people, you can really feel it get tense from the platform. There are three topics that you can talk about. And one of them is sex. One of them is tongues, and the other's finances. And we took a whole Sunday and talked about finances and where we're headed as a church, and one of the things that we're doing with this campaign. So, I'm excited about it. I'm excited to talk a little bit about it today, and maybe give some, as we look at some backstory stuff on this too. But it's much different. We don't have anybody with us, so it's just the two of us. Good to be back at the table with you, though, Bryan.
Oh, for sure. And being involved, I've been in church pretty much almost literally my whole life. And so I've in leadership positions in churches, and but I was a pastor and stuff. So I've been around a lot of conversations about those three things. And those conversations are really people fired up sometimes. You get some emails, you get some comments and things, stuff like that. But I do love the way that you and the finance team tackled this topic Sunday. So for those who are watching who's maybe don't know right off top, maybe didn't see, they didn't watch it, kind of give a quick 2-minute scenario of kind of what we're talking about here today.
Yeah, so we were celebrating, really truthfully, I don't think a whole lot of people knew till we started opening it up, the fact that August makes 16 years as a church. And when we brought the two churches together to become one, which is Destination Church, so we had that going on. So it was a bit of a celebration there. But on the other side of it, we started what we're calling, as we look at the breakout campaign. We're starting a 4-month campaign. We have $200,000 in debt. We're trying to. It's on properties, just properties and buildings, and we're trying to relinquish that. So we really felt pretty strong, our lead team and our finance team, that we could do it by the end of the year. So we presented it to our people along with the backstory. I would tell anybody that wanted to see it or know it to go back and listen to it on our YouTube page and be able to hear it on live there and see how we did it. It was we spent a lot of time working on that piece and making sure all the numbers were right and everything was right where it needed to be. And we're excited now because we're just waiting to watch God do what only He can do now as we look at what looks like an enormous amount of money to pay it off. But wow, it's going to be so amazing when we do have it paid off. So I can't wait to see what it's going to look like, really truthfully, going into the to 2027. It's so weird to talk about 2027. Here we are 33 episodes in, and we're talking about 2027. It's so crazy to me.
That's wild.
And so the other thing that I would say too, Bryan, is that I feel like this is a really important episode because legacy, we talked about legacy. We're in the fourth quarter still, and wow, this coming Sunday, it's going to be amazing. I can't wait. We're going to talk about overtime. And if you're a Georgia Bulldog fan, you know a lot about overtime. Right. And so just remember that Sunday because we are going into overtime. I can't wait, though, biblically to lay that out. But it's really important because we're talking about legacy and generosity. And the conversation, it could easily become a conversation about money. But reality is when biblically, it's really a conversation about worship and stewardship and freedom and mission. And so I want to, make that very clear. And then I thought the other thing that I would like to do on the front end of this message is for a moment, because we didn't really talk about it. I think maybe Steve Laddig, who's our team leader on our finance team, he talked about the tithe a little bit. And so I thought I might give a couple of thoughts on the tithe, and then we would dive into where we were Sunday. So, and so this just for a couple of moments, I think sometimes everybody has their own thoughts and opinions, and so do we. And we know how we believe about tithes. I usually tie it to tithes, offerings, and then I'll also talk about alms. And so I'm usually looking at those three. It's how I was taught. I see it biblically. And so when I'm looking at this, for me, the biblical framework would be is that the tithe it's the first, it's the tenth, it's that first, I like to call it. The word means tenth, and it's a principle, of course, of giving God the first. And one thing about it is it appears before the law. And so we see that in passages like Genesis 14:20, Genesis, I think, 28:22, Genesis 14:20, Abraham gives a tenth to Melchizedek. And then in Genesis 28:22, Jacob speaks of giving a tenth to God. And so we see the tithe, it was established there, and then we see it, all the way through. And I think the other thing is, like, is that under the Mosaic covenant, the tithe becomes part of Israel's covenantal worship, if I could use that word. It was a provision for the Levites and the ministry of the tabernacle and the temple, and that kind of got us to how we started Sunday with this Exodus 35 passage. Right. I'll talk about it in a moment. Leviticus says bring the tithe belongs to the Lord. Proverbs 3:9, I think, is honor the Lord with your wealth and the first fruits of all your produce. And so we see this honor piece, God being first. So the theological idea, I guess, would be God gets that 10%, and God gets the first because God is first. That would be a simple way to look at it, and about that. And then the offering to me is like an overflow, and that's where we are with this campaign. It's an overflow. It's broader than the tithe. It's a gift brought voluntarily for God's purposes. And again, as we look, and I have my Bible with me, in the Exodus 35 passage, there was actually two passages, but we've honed in on 29, Exodus 35:29. Exodus 35:21 says, and I think maybe Matthew Tootin, another finance team member, said it, but it says, and they came, everyone whose heart stirred him, and everyone whose spirit moved him, and brought the Lord's contribution to be used for the tent of meeting, because they were building the tent of meeting for all in its service and for the holy garment. So there again we see for the tent, but also for the Levites there. And then verse 29 says, all the men and women, the people of Israel, whose heart moved them to bring anything for the work that the Lord had commanded by Moses to be done, brought it as a freewill offer to the Lord. And that's where we really honed in on that piece. Of course, every week we always talk about cheer and cheer boxes, and offerings aren't about manipulating or God or buying blessing. Actually, their worship expressed through the word we use all the time is generosity. And then there's alms, and we see this with the compassion. Alms given the way I know it is given to meet the needs of the poor, the vulnerable, and the hurting. And I think Jesus just assumed that his followers would be obedient to Matthew 6, verses 1 through 4. He talks about giving to the needy without seeking recognition. And so just the alms piece there's so many passages on that. So tithe would equal worship through priority. The offering is worship through generosity. And then alms is worship through compassion. And so just a quick note on those three and letting people think about it and pray about it. And for me, and this is how I was always taught, that the tithe teaches me to put God first. The offering teaches me to trust God beyond the first. And then alms teach me to see people the way God sees people. And, my heart for the poor, and my heart for those that are less fortunate. And here we are in our DC downtown campus, and I'm looking across, and we have people that have been able to get showers and all kind of cool stuff over there. They're getting fed, and so it's really neat to look out the window and be able to see that. So that piece is there, and so lead us into possibly where we were Sunday.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the transparency behind what the finance team did, what you did, and because I'm not going to compare to anybody else, but like that, I think that's where a lot of the anxiety comes from when people giving their money, because they are giving their money they've sacrificed. Right. A lot of people are saying, well, this is the only money I have. Maybe they don't feel like they have enough money, but there's no manipulation. There was no feel like you had to give. I love the fact that you said seek God first. Let him tell you, first of all, if you should give.
That's right.
Second of all, how much you should give.
That's right.
If so. So the whole thing about the breakout, like we talked about this a little bit before, and it wasn't just this idea that you come up on the whim or Matthew or somebody just like, let's do this, guys. But there was a process behind this thing, a very thought out process. So if you could let's pull the curtain back a little bit on that, what that process looked like to getting that on paper.
So you could hear the whole story. I love how Steve painted the picture very well, and then we did have pictures Sunday, but it was a few years back, we saw where the debt was and how we could possibly take it out. And so we started working on that. And then through a series of events, we were able to really bring that way down. And so at the beginning of this year, so we've been working on this for quite a while. At the beginning of this year, we started praying. Our lead team and our finance team started praying, and out from under it, for whatever reason, I think it was because, we're in the final quarter of the year. At that time, I didn't know at the beginning of the year, I didn't know we were doing fourth quarter, but it lent itself very well to that. And so, but I was praying, and I felt like the Lord took me to the Exodus 35 passage. And I love that passage. I've already read it, but I love it because the three things in the verse. And so this is what popped out to me, was this possibility of what they did. They gave willingly, and that's what we wanted our people to do. That's why there's no pressure. Their hearts were moved to see this happen, so that we can see more happen, because we are a growing church. And then I love the fact that it was that God had called them, what God had called them to, and well, of course, what God's called us to here, and we laid it out. And so I just prayed over it, and then I took that scripture. And I remember this meeting very well. I was with the team, the finance team, and I said, hey, guys, what do y'all think about this as we get ready to look at this whole breakout thing? And I just kind of put it on the table, hard copy. We didn't have anything digital, and said, what do y'all think? And then we, of course, started asking the Lord for creativity on how to put it together. And one thing led to another. That's why everybody had a specific piece, because everybody runs in a different lane on the team. They all have different responsibilities there as they're looking at stuff and looking at our finances. And so it was really neat to be able to hear and see that as well. And so, and the other piece of it is, and you've heard this from day one, Bryan, if you've been coming to our church, is this legacy piece, and how does it tie in? How does legacy tie into finances? And in my heart of hearts, legacy is not about money. Legacy is about mission. Legacy is about being surrendered. Legacy or having that surrendered heart. And then also legacy is about, breaking free from debt to advance the gospel. Mm-hmm. I've seen this in other churches I've been in and been a part of, been on staff with. And so I knew that. And so there's a passage that's hidden, and I didn't go here Sunday, but there's this passage that's hidden in Psalm 78, verses 4-7. And because the power of legacy has been able to hand it down or making a way for others. Mm-hmm. And so specifically in our families, it's for our kids and grandkids and great-grandkids scripturally. And so we see that. And so, but it says, we will not hide them from our children. It was talking about the ways of the Lord, but, and then it says, but to tell the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord. And so we want to be that place, right? Mm-hmm. Where we can do that and make sure and do it effectively. So, legacies is just not merely what we would leave for our children. It's what we leave in our children. Mm-hmm. For us, it's spiritual children, right, from the church, and it's what we're going to leave for them. And that's why I talked about it Sunday, was standing on the shoulders and the sacrifices of many other people over, the last 16 years, but even prior to that with Pastor Johnny and their church and our church, prior to that too, was the shoulders and sacrifices of other people that they had made for us. So Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, I guess as I'm getting older, I'm almost 40, not quite 40 yet, but still I'm already thinking in terms of legacy for my kids, because part of it was going through Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University as a small group I think 2 semesters ago. But it really gets you thinking, and we can kind of jump the tracks a little bit here and off a little side tangent. We could get so caught up in the money aspect of it, and so caught up in what we are missing out on. We miss out on a blessing that could come from just the obedience factor in it. It's not a matter of the money. I can't remember who it was that made the statement, but you mentioned, or they mentioned, that it's not an equal amount everybody's give, but it's just equal sincerity.
That's right.
And that really struck me, because I may not be able to give $500 like somebody else maybe could, but I could give $5, or I could give $50, or I can give $1. And it goes back to the lady with giving the alms. Okay. Jesus was
that was the picture Jesus was looking at with the disciples.
And it wasn't these big checks, to put it in today's terms. It wasn't big checks these other people were writing, but she was giving out of sincerity of heart. And that's the part of it where he honors the obedience factor in it. And this whole thing, even being in church my whole life, I've never really seen anything done quite like this. And so I think it's also fascinating to me. And while I feel like it's good to open that up so people could see that there are, it's not just we want to raise some money and do these things. But there's actually a heart behind it. There's a reason behind it. And knowing you well to do, I know this isn't some campaign just to raise money. It's to see people. That's right. Get financial freedom, to see the church get financial freedom, to be able to go either further into ministry than what we're doing right now. Yeah, I think it was, and I think Matthew actually talked about people over polish and looking at that. That's so good about us. But going back to the Ramsey principles, we have always operated. You heard it Sunday, but with a budget. But then we realized quickly that we had to tighten the hatches down even more. Mm-hmm. And so that Proverbs 22:7 passage is so real to us as Christians, as people that believe in the Bible, but the borrower is slave to the lender. Mm-hmm. And we know that. Doesn't mean that we can't borrow, but we need to have the means to make sure that we're able to take care of that as well. And so I think it's interesting to know that you're dealing with like debt slavery, I guess, in so many ways. And so, as we're looking at it, so we did use Dave's principles even as a church, and I think it was wisdom, Dave Ramsey. It's not just for households, it's for businesses, it's for churches, it's for any of those things. Mm-hmm. And so as we started using that, what we saw is that 4 years of intentional stewardship, and we were able to pay off, of course, it was property and building debt, but $480,000 while, prioritizing local outreach over cosmetic facility upgrades, because we definitely want to make sure that we're ministering to the poor. And the whole equal sacrifice doesn't mean equal amounts. I think this is it's a important
part for us to understand. And we talk about it a lot when we talk about finances. We do, but we have to be, ready for that. God's not asking us to give the same amount. He's asking us to give with the same surrender. I like that. And so, and that takes us back to that Mark passage that you were referring to, Mark 12, there 41 through 44. Like the wealthy people were given large amounts, and then this widow comes and she puts 2 small coins, and Jesus said she gave more. And so whoever's listening, or people in our body that we know, I mentioned it Sunday, like white collar workers, blue collar workers, and maybe no collar workers.
Right.
People like, that's my own phraseology, by the way. So if you got a problem, that's on me. But the widow gave the 2 small coins. That Jesus said she gave more because, God doesn't measure generosity the way we do. We measure the size of the gift. God measures the sacrifice of the heart. And so just some things we've learned and are continuing to learn it as we work on this and look at it. So I think it's very good, yes, to be able to talk about it and see what the Lord has done.
That's good. And mention the transparency part of it is very transparent. Sunday is very transparent where we're as a church, all the way down to what the budget looks like, how much money it takes each week to run to run the church, to pay the salaries and things. And I feel like good transparency comes from good systems. I like systems. I'm a process person. I love having a process for everything. And so when there are good systems put in place to protect that, I think you can go a lot further with that. That's why you can be so transparent. So I don't have even our notes to discuss, but we talked about so many times before. What does the process look like for Destination Church? Like as far as like his staff handle money, like who handles the money, who does that sort of thing?
No, sir. It's a very tight process, and I don't even know who helped us come up with how we do it. But as a matter of fact, we have people that collect, and then we have a different set of people that count. So if you drop $1 in, that's how it's handled. There's people that collect, then there's people that count, a different set of people that count. There's everybody signing off. There's always an odd amount of people. And I mean, there's so many, we have so many controls in place on this, this one piece. And then that's just getting it there, getting it counted, and, getting it to the financial institution from there. And digital stuff has helped us a lot, and it's really good. But that's on the physical side of things. And then the controls we have in place outside of that, no, staff does not touch any of the physical, the money there. All staff can do is see numbers on a page. And so, as a matter of fact, we just had a meeting this past week where we're even tightening the controls there and making sure that there's absolutely no way that even a penny would be misplaced on that piece in our accounts and all the ways that we do that. And so it is a very tight system. If anybody would like to know about it, I mean, of course, you could email us or call the church. If you could email us and we could explain every drop of it, or call the church. We'd love to set up an appointment, have somebody come in, and we are an open book with that. One of us would be able to sit down and explain every piece of that. And so it is one of those places. My pastor always said to me, and he still tells me because he meets with me a lot, he talks about the 3 G's for me would be that would get you in trouble, and it is the gold, which would be the finances, the glory, it's God, it's God's the one that gets the glory, not man. And then, of course, for me, it would be the girls. For a girl, it would be a guy, the guys. The 3 G's, right there. Those are the things that we see take people out all the time. And so we want to make sure we have things in place across the board on all 3 of those. And so that's what that looks like for us. And so moving forward, as we watch this thing unfold, I can't wait to really see what the Lord's going to do with it. Did that answer your question?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I've got a circle of friends where anytime something happens to make headline news in the church world, especially with its financial base, it's like, oh, see that right there. So I feel like it's worth taking a couple minutes to kind of open that door up a little bit, and kind of so people can understand. Like we take it very seriously. It's not just one person collects it, counts it, all that kind of stuff. We have very in-depth and complex systems. Yes. Some of that, I didn't realize how deep that was.
It's very deep. We've had people come in and be like, oh my goodness, come out of other towns or places that they would come in and be a part of us, and then eventually maybe become a counter or collector or whatever, and like, I've never seen systems like this, and we're like, we can't be careful enough.
Right.
It's God's money, number one, and I don't want to just, definitely, and so, but number two, it is other people's that are, it is ultimately God's, but people are in the puzzle. That's why sometimes I think the way I was trained, the church generosity isn't fundamentally about funding an institution. It's about funding mission. And we want to make sure that we're able to do that with everything inside of us, local, translocal, national, and global. That's how we do all of our, talk about one of the things too is our missions. And that's how we work that piece as well. We're given into those, those different entities. And so Paul kind of gives us a picture, I think, in maybe of Philippians 4. He talks about the fruit that increases to your credit. He was talking to the Philippian church about that. But I think a piece of it is having the safeguards, the guardrails, the controls in place to make sure nothing happens. And so, for Paul, they weren't just paying his bills. Of course, he was a tent maker. I know that, and he worked with his hands. But they were participating in the gospel, and that's what I feel like is going on. Is there's a participation in the gospel, and so for this campaign, it's definitely a breakout. I think it's going to be good. And again, we're not asking people to fund a building; we're asking people to participate in the mission. And so, we're as we walk through this.
Because I'm sure if it was about a building, we could probably not we ever would. We could probably pull some money back from the ministry going out, and we could raise money for a building pretty quick. I'm sure.
Yes.
But the whole point of it though is the mission don't stop.
That's right.
The ministry doesn't stop. You can't stop doing ministry for the sake of having a nice pretty building. And I love that. That's I think Matthew brought that out too.
He did, yeah. That he kept saying, people over polish.
That's right.
And so I think if anybody walked into any of our buildings, I think they would see that because we are, yes. I think they use the term tired. Our building's tired, and carpet is very worn and all that. But it's okay. We, our heart is people. One of the things I didn't get a chance to look at, Bryan, and in this piece was, as we're looking at that Proverbs passage in Proverbs 22:7, I had, and I think we'll get here in a few, I can't say a few weeks, but maybe from here to the end of the year, there might be a couple of other messages just working through individual finances and stuff like that. And and so Steve and I are working on looking at something like that right now. But I was thinking about debt, and because people always, they pull back. When we talk about money, a lot of times it's either their money or they're in so much debt that there's just a lot of, shame that comes with it and guilt with debt. And so, and then we have that passage, the borrower is slave to the lender. But one of the things I started doing a little deep dive on, and we didn't talk about this Sunday, but I thought that you and I could just bat it around a little bit. But I was looking at the, as we're looking at this whole thing, the Bible doesn't say like debt is sinful, or that all debt is sinful. I want to be careful here. I know that. I don't want to twist anything, and I don't want people to freak out on me. But Scripture repeatedly warns us, though, what it warns us of, and this is where we are when we go into debt, is it's a loss of freedom and stewardship. That's what excessive debt can create. So the key would be is not to spend more than we're bringing in on that piece, and then that would help us right there. Paul told us in Romans 13:8, owe no one anything except to love one another. So I think that was big. Proverbs 21:5, the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. And we see that a lot in today's time. And then Jesus told us in Luke 14 as well, that in that same passage, which one of you desiring a tower does not first sit down and count the cost? So we're seeing financial wisdom. So here's how I want to say this, and I want to be careful. But debt is not necessarily a sin, but debt can become a master. You see that?
Oh, yeah.
And you know that, right?
Right.
We know that because we know each other, and we were in financial peace together too. And so I think that connects Jesus's words very well in Matthew 6:24, where he says you can't serve God and money. Okay. And so the issue isn't simply money. The issue is mastery. And so that's why we talk about not being in debt, because we know the pressure that it puts on us. And this pressure that we've had on us, even as a church, because of how we rolled everything in and did everything in the merch and all that, like we've been carrying this on, like physically, spiritually on my shoulders, but physically too, because our name's on the line and all that with that as well. And so, but I thought that was an interesting piece there on that. And the other side of it would be that financial freedom, it isn't so we can consume more. That's not it at all.
Right.
As a matter of fact, it creates a capacity for generosity, for us to give more, and for mission is what it does. Whatever that looks like, children's ministry, student ministry, overseas ministry, all these different things. And so what we have to realize is the Apostle Paul is very clear that the person who works should work so that they may have something to share with anyone in need. And so, again, I don't want to go off on a tangent or anything like this, but what I see the pattern is work, earn, provide, share, as we're working through this. Even in the kingdom, we see that. And it's a good cycle to see for us as individuals, as leaders as well. And so the goal of financial freedom isn't a bigger lifestyle, it's a bigger capacity for generosity. So thoughts on that? Because we went through Ramsey together, so we know this.
Well, and even the mention of Dave Ramsey, his name, like used to, he was a Christian, he was a churchgoer. I used to hear his name, I was like, oh that's a bunch of mess. Like he wants to tell you to sell your stuff, not have any fun, not have any. But I learned that it's really not true. Like he really does want to help you to get free and get this freedom. And since we started on that path, I wish I could say we were there. We're not quite there yet, but we're making strides, making headway.
That's right.
And just being able to have money left over in the bank and be able to not have to worry about having as many bills coming out and get all this stuff cleared out, it really does get a huge pressure off your chest, off your back, and you feel like you do have more capacity for other things. Whereas before, if I felt the need to bless somebody, I would pull up the bank app and say, okay, do we have the money here to do it? And that was on me. That was, instead of trusting God, I was like, okay, well, my human mind was like, okay, are we covered first? And then I can bless somebody else.
That's right.
That's kind of the whole, I feel like that's kind of the whole undertone behind this is as a church and as individuals to be able to get this kind of freedom where any ministry, any mission that God gives us to do, like we're just all in, no questions asked.
And the other thing that they pointed out clearly, and again, if you watched it, you would see it or go back and watch and listen, but the Breakout Campaign needs to be clearly different from ordinary giving. And so, in other words, you're asking the Lord to see, there may be some sacrifice in this. I know it will be for us. But I think, regular giving sustains the ongoing mission. But when we do stuff like this, special generosity can actually accelerate a specific mission. And so, that's what we're looking at as we open this thing up. And so, special offering, I don't think it's unbiblical. But the heart posture remains very critical in this. Right. And that's what we wanted people to hear. That's why we were so, definitely gentle. That's why we were not, all the things that we use, because we didn't want anybody, and we don't want anyone to feel manipulated. I hope it's creating an opportunity for generosity. And so, as we open it up and work through it. So, but yeah, that's kind of where I am with that and how that looks. Again, I don't think we could say enough. If there are any questions, you will see a follow-up video every week, and we'll keep everybody up to date on how everything's going to work with it. And, and make sure that everything is working the way it should. I think the key too is as we look at transparency, going back to that for a moment, as we look at transparency and we look through this, it's just I can't say it enough, it's just a part of biblical stewardship and integrity. And so if you only knew what the team went through to get us to what we talked about Sunday, because they were trying, literally, they did a great job, not just tried, they did it. Dot every I, cross every T. Even up to the hour before we started the 8 o'clock service Sunday morning, still making sure that everything was just where it needed to be. And I appreciate that about them. That's why they do that for us on that team. And so, it was just absolutely powerful. And again, you said it, but good systems don't replace trust, but good systems protect trust. And so I am so grateful for our systems, our finance team, our lead team, the way they run all that through with each other. And and so it's a great system. I'm grateful for the people that helped us put all of these together. But the final thing would be this, as we get ready to close out today, is legacy plus generosity ultimately points to Jesus. It points to Jesus. I can't say it enough. It's where we get this whole generosity thing from. Christianity isn't about ultimately a message about our generosity, but it's a message about God's generosity. We go back to the most famous scripture law, John 3:16, for God gave his son. And so he's the ultimate, he's the one with ultimate generosity. And he made a way for us to spend eternity with him. And that's the beauty of this whole thing to me. And, so many passages like he did not spare his own son, but gave him for us all. Though he was rich, for your sake, he became poor, right? So that you, by his poverty, might become rich. I mean, on and on. And so I just love it. It's just self-emptying generosity for Christ. And that could be done through many ways. Of course, it's not just about finances. It's about time. It's about your talent and your treasure in my heart. And so, I think we could say it over and over again, but we don't give in order to make God generous towards us. We give because God's already been generous to us. And so generous. And I don't want to take anything ever away from that. And so yeah. And we closed out with, I think, a 4-point challenge. You remember that?
Yeah, I think it's really, a couple times, but yeah, it's very good. So if you want to hit that one more time, just for anybody that maybe didn't see Sunday's message.
Yeah, and I know we're beyond Matthew's, maybe we're not. Matthew said take 48 hours with a pen in hand. I appreciate that. But I would say it like this, and it might be a little different than how Matthew brought it to us, but pray with a pen. I love James 1:5 for that. Ask God for wisdom. Not God tell me what number will impress you, but God, what are you asking me to do? That's why we said pray with a pen in hand. Number 2 would be, and you've talked about it all day today, is make a plan. In other words, count the cost. That's what Jesus said. That scripture in Luke 14:28, count the cost. Faith is not opposed to planning. And so count the cost. Faith plans while we trust God. So I think he'll give you the number, he and your spouse, if you're, prayerfully, if you're married, that's how you're going to do it, or with your whole family. So I'm going to pray with my pen in my hand. I'm going to make a plan. Number 3, I'm going to give willingly. Again, goes back to our key passage we use almost every Sunday, 2 Corinthians 9:7, right? That we're not, no guilt, it's not comparison, it's not competition. It's not manipulation, it's worship. And so give willingly. And then number 4 would be trust God with the outcome. I'm going to trust God. That's what we're doing right now. I told all the teams Sunday, I was just like, it's the Lord's now. I mean, and so this whole process, it is the Lord's. And I feel like he's going to do what he does. that's that. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart, and seek first the kingdom of God. And I feel like we've been doing that wholeheartedly, really, for these years that they talked about, but specifically since the beginning of the year, preparing for last Sunday. So it was a powerful point.
That's so good.
So, those would be my 4 keys to walk out of here with.
Yeah. So hopefully that's helpful for you to, whether it's to get it on the Breakout campaign, to whether or not you should give toward that, or even as far as for budgeting purposes, you use that. You ask God, like,
that's right.
What should we allocate for giving, or for generosity, or for alms, or for whatever. So hopefully that's helped you out. If you have any questions, you can always call the church. Like Pastor Rodney said, we're very, very open with if you have any questions about the process. And if you have any questions about this particular stuff we talked about, you can leave a comment below. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube or Spotify, wherever you watch this episode. And let us know if you have any prayer requests, you think you'd like for us to pray about. It came out 21 days of prayer and fasting.
Yes.
But it don't mean we have to stop praying. We have to keep praying.
Amen.
And so let us know if you have any prayer requests as far as that goes. And even for personal finance, I think Stephen mentioned it, but if you have any if you need help getting a budget together, if you need help to figure out how we do this budgeting thing, get rid of debt, like we have people on the team that are very knowledgeable, and they're very willing to help with that. They want to.
Yes.
So to call the church office and get scheduled an appointment for them, and for sure we'd love to help you out with that. So Pastor, any final thoughts? And
well, we didn't have a soul tattoo Sunday.
I noticed that. I thought it was kind of strange.
It was a little strange. It's 2 weeks in. Well, no, High King had one. I'll give him credit on that. But we didn't have one Sunday. But if I had one to give, and I don't know, someone told me this long ago about money and ministry, but and also money and God, and they told me that we don't give because God needs our money. We give because we need our hearts freed from the grip of money. And so I think it's important to know that goes beyond just finances. That's discipleship. It's just breaking the power of the age,
right?
Which is that mammon, and so, and I don't want it to master me. So, as always, we say it every week here, but Sunday starts the conversation, but right here is where it continues. So we love you guys, and I'm so excited to be with you today as we talked about something that's very important to Destination Church, but also hopefully to you. And just like Bryan said, we're here for you if you need anything, and we'll see you back here next week.